Welcome to this explainer. In 2026, we are looking at an absolutely massive cultural collision right here in North America. Today, we're going to put the continent's deepest, most passionate sports obsessions head-to-head with the arrival of literally the largest sporting event on the planet. It's going to be wild.
So, let's kick things off by asking what I think is the ultimate cultural question. It's one that really reveals how completely different the US, Canada, and Mexico actually are. Ready? What singular event makes an entire nation literally drop everything and watch? Because depending on where you're standing on the continent, you get three wildly different, deeply emotional answers.
And boom, right out of the gate, you see this huge cultural rift. Americans, they rally around an internal domestic league championship. But their neighbors, they look outward. Canadians rally around international hockey, and Mexicans around international football. So we have three deeply passionate host countries with entirely different definitions of what the biggest game actually means.
Let's move into Section 1, the national television benchmarks. Three completely different obsessions.
Starting in the United States, their ultimate benchmark is just an absolute behemoth. The Super Bowl routinely draws well over 120 million domestic viewers. It's so dominant, U.S. television records are basically just a running list of different Super Bowls.
It's crazy because the Super Bowl has totally morphed from a simple football game into basically a pseudo-national holiday. People tune in for the complete American formula. You've got the game, sure, but also the million-dollar commercials, the huge halftime spectacle, the social gathering, the whole shebang. It is a massive, completely self-contained American event.
But hey, move up north to Canada, and the picture changes entirely. A staggering 80% of the population watched at least part of the 2010 Olympic men's hockey gold medal game. 80%! No election, no entertainment show, and definitely no domestic game has ever come close to that.
Just picture the raw emotion here. At the exact second Sidney Crosby scored the overtime winner against the U.S., an instant forever known as the Golden Goal, roughly two-thirds of the entire Canadian nation was watching simultaneously. It was this singular, unifying international triumph.
Now, down in Mexico, they don't even need a singular, once-in-a-lifetime game. Any World Cup match involving the national team routinely brings the country to an absolute standstill. Neighborhoods literally empty out. Traffic just disappears. Businesses halt. The World Cup itself is basically their supreme cultural religion.
And Mexico's history with this tournament is unmatched. They hosted iconic cups in 1970 and 1986, and in 2026, they'll become the first nation to ever host 3 times. But there's a major catch. That deeply passionate 1986 run on home soil, it casts a massive, emotional shadow over the present day.
Which brings us nicely to Section 2, the ultimate audience comparison, domestic versus planetary.
So physically, these events actually look kind of similar. A 2026 final at MetLife Stadium is going to hold over 80,000 fans, totally mirroring a typical Super Bowl crowd. But the real difference isn't the size of the crowd and the seats, it's the sheer volume of humanity watching through their screens.
Let's visualize this with a super simple global metric, all right? Imagine exactly 100 people representing the entire population of Earth. When the Super Bowl is on, despite being an absolute giant in America, only about 3 or 4 of those 100 people globally actually care deeply about it.
Now apply that exact same metric to Canada's heart-stopping hockey gold medal game. It is a monumental, defining moment in Canada for sure, but globally, only 1 or 2 people out of our global 100 are tuning in.
But when that World Cup final kicks off, the whole dynamic just flips. Almost everyone out of those 100 people knows it's happening. It's being broadcast simultaneously across hundreds of countries. It elevates right out of a regional obsession into a genuine planetary conversation.
To really put this into perspective, a World Cup final hosted in the U.S. might draw a global audience 10 to 20 times larger than the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl completely dominates America, but the World Cup dominates the entire planet.
Moving on to Section 3, the enormous 2026 pressure.
Look, we're talking about an economic and logistical weight that has literally never been attempted in North American sports. 48 teams, 104 matches, spread across 3 massive host countries and watched by billions. The logistics alone are immense, but honestly, the localized cultural pressure is even heavier.
From Mexico, man, the pressure is just a crushing burden. Despite their vast hosting experience, they've never reached a World Cup semifinal on home soil. So the 2026 squad isn't just playing a tournament, they are literally fighting the ghosts of 1986, carrying the desperate expectation of their incredibly passionate fans.
For Canada, though, it's this staggering opportunity. They've never had a football moment even remotely comparable to the golden goal. If they manage to reach the knockout stages in 2026, it could completely shatter television records, creating a football broadcast that finally, actually, challenges the emotional supremacy of their hockey legacy.
So as we look at how the philosophy of these massive events is shifting, a super clear pattern pops up. Traditionally, the United States approaches its biggest event asking a strictly domestic question. Which team is America's champion?
Meanwhile, Canada's cultural touchstone has always revolved around defending a very specific domain, asking the rest of the world, which nation is best at hockey? And then you have Mexico's television history, which has always been defined by this passionate, desperate hope of breaking through on the global stage, asking, can Mexico finally make history today? Because of the sprawling, basically continent-sized geography and the totally unprecedented expansion to 48 teams, historians are definitely going to view 2026 as something much heavier than just another tournament. It is the exact moment the World Cup enters an entirely new era of scale and complexity. Which leaves us with this final, kind of mind-bending thought to take away. As the entire planet watches a tournament spanning 3 distinct nations and 48 desperate teams, who is actually going to survive the absolute toughest path any champion has ever faced?